welcome once again to our show, Real Shame, where we watch movies that we probably should have seen from our list of shame, but we're rectifying that right now. I'm Adam.
I'm Andy.
Earlier this week, we had our 150th episode, and we decided to go into The Godfather, and we wanted to follow it up with its sequel. Why not, right?
Hey.
So this week, we're watching The Godfather Part 2, right?
Yep. The location is different. They're in Vegas. But the family saga continues with the Corleone family in The Godfather Part 2.
E so che diciamo qua resta ciagnauci. Se voi oggi siete d'accordo, perché umerate 50 scudi l'uno per pagare a Fanucci? E vi garantisco che io si beghi so che ci rugno io.
Quando Fanucci regge 200, non c'è niente da fare, vedi?
Ha ragione io. Questo. Lasciate fare a me. I take everything. Io risetto tutte le cose. E ho menzogna e non ne dico mai alla amici me. I riuscì romani voi avuci a parlare con Fanucci. Io doveva domandare i soldi. E faceteci capire che voi avete intenzione di pagare tutto quello che va domani e senza discutere. E poi ci vado io. E mi ci sciarrio io qui. Non c'è bisogno che fate incazzare che io sai se è così malandrino come decite voi oggi, no?
Ma come fai tu a farci pigliare di meno?
A voi oggi non mi interessa. Ma solo ricordatevi che vi feci un piacere.
So Godfather Part 2, once again, directed by Francis Ford Coppola in the year 1974. So 2 years after the original Godfather. Most of the cast, if they weren't killed in the first movie, they're pretty much back again. So I'm not going to list off, Al Pacino and all those people. But, Marlon Brando's not in this movie. James Caan is in this movie, but only in a flashback scene because he was killed in the first movie. But, Tom Hagen is back, Robert Duvall, all those people. But this movie adds a few people. Acting coach Lee Strasberg plays Hyman Roth. Michael V. Gazzo plays Frank Pentangeli. Frankie Five Angels. Young Bruno Kirby plays a young Clemenza in the sort of, I don't want to call it a flashback, but you basically got two stories in Godfather Part 2. You've got first it's Vito Andolini, but Vito Corleone's rise to power, as well as Michael's kind of continuation of power, or I guess you could call it a rise to power. Marianna Hill gets added as Frito's wife. She's Deanna Corleone. Joe Spinell, he's in Part 1, like at the very end. But he plays a little bit bigger part in this movie. He's Willie Chichi. I love Joe Spinell for a number of reasons. He's a great character actor, taken way too soon. But I love him mostly because he wrote and starred in the movie Maniac, the horror film Maniac from 1980, which is a great, gritty, gross, grimy 1980 New York horror film. One-time sex symbol Troy Donahue's in this movie. Dominic Chianese, I hope I said that right. He plays Johnny Ola. You will know him as Junior from The Sopranos. Yes, Junior, Uncle Junior. Harry D. Stanton is in Godfather Part 2. He plays the FBI agent that is guarding Frank Pentangeli. And finally, the biggest addition probably to the cast in Godfather Part 2 is Mr. Robert De Niro is in this film. He plays the young version of Marlon Brando. Starts off as, well, his name actually is Vito Andolini, but because he comes from the town of Corleone, when he gets to America, they call him Vito Corleone.
Ellis Island,
they're like, yeah, Corleone, whatever.
Corleone, go with it.
Your last name is now Corleone. So he becomes Vito Corleone. So this film has, basically, as I said, two stories. You've got, starts in 1901 with Robert De Niro's character as a young boy, Vito Corleone. I'll just refer to him as that instead of Vito Andolini. Vito Corleone as a young boy, kind of him going to New York City, growing up. And then you've got Al Pacino. They're in Vegas. They're running some casinos. They're running some hotels. He's calling the shots now. Marlon Brando's out of the picture because he died in the first film. But you had never seen Godfather. You had never seen, obviously, Godfather Part 2. I think that would be weird if you were like, I watched Godfather Part 2, but I never watched Godfather.
I did it with Aliens.
You'd never seen.
I watched Aliens well before.
You could watch Alien. I mean, this film, I feel like, you got to watch Godfather before you go watch Godfather Part 2. So obviously you've never seen both of them. So I'm just going to throw it to you. You gave us your thoughts on the Godfather.
Yeah.
Give us a little something on what you knew about Godfather Part 2 going in. Probably not much, and what you thought of it.
So I knew this movie had a split storyline, right?
Okay.
So we followed two characters at different times in history and all that kind of stuff. So I was ready for that. Didn't know a whole lot about this movie kind of going into it other than that. And again, I thought it was good. I'm with you, what we kind of said in the last episode, where I feel like The Godfather shines a little bit more in my eyes than this movie. This movie, I think, starts off really great, and I think it's really interesting in the way it kind of starts off. And I feel it peters out. It kind of meanders towards the end, and it just loses me at that end. And that end just is not as good or as interesting to me as the movie is when it first starts. And I think this movie does some things better than the first movie. And because Michael is front and center, Al Pacino's character is front and center, I feel like you get more characterization from him. You get more of how he feels about things, his wants and his desires. I mean, this whole movie is basically about his desires, right? About him getting into business with these people in Cuba and kind of expanding his whole business out and all that kind of stuff. And you get that he wants all that kind of stuff from this movie. Whereas in the first movie, I really don't feel like feel like Michael's more being pushed around rather than driving where he wants to go and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think he kind of is.
So,
and he's new to it all.
Yeah. Right. And so in this movie, since he's kind of the head, he can kind of maybe do a little bit more and spread his legs and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I will say that I find Vito's story a lot more interesting than I find Michael's story.
Okay.
And and that's being said, because I don't find the Cuba stuff and all that kind of intrigue, who's trying to sell me out, who's trying to kill me kind of stuff as interesting. And unfortunately, I feel like the Vito stuff, they kind of ran out of material, because I feel like for a large chunk, maybe in like the second, third act, he kind of disappears. It's all about Michael and all that kind of stuff. And then we catch back up with him just in time for him to kill that old mobster and stuff like that. And then he's done, right? And, so I wish we had more Vito in this movie.
Okay.
So I feel like that's a big breadth of what I thought about this movie. It's, again, you said this is your second time watching it. You haven't seen it since the 90s.
Yeah.
So what did you remember liking about this movie, and what did you feel about it this time?
Yeah, well, I mentioned this on Monday, but at the time, I thought Part 2 was superior to Part 1, but I think Part 1 is better than Part 2, and it's interesting. I really like both movies a lot. I like this one slightly less than Part 1. But I wasn't as crazy about the Robert De Niro stuff this time. I don't find that part of the story boring or anything like that, but I thought, is this really needed? Yeah. I understand why it's there, and yes, ultimately I do think that it's needed, and I do think it's interesting. I just don't think it's as interesting as maybe I once did, or whatever. And I don't know that I think it's as interesting as you did. One thing I didn't say when we were talking about Part 1 is because we did talk about how Michael's character, Al Pacino's character, is very much a supporting character in that first film. You do see him kind of. It isn't, as we mentioned, it's kind of in his blood to be part of the family, even if they don't want him to be part of the family, and if he doesn't want to be part of the family. But what we didn't talk about was the ending of Part 1, which I really, really love that ending. He's just had his sister's husband killed because his sister's husband, Talia Shire's husband, has set Sonny up because he beat her. He's been beaten up by Sonny. First of all, for beating his wife in the first place, and he's been told by Sonny, if you ever beat up my wife again, if you ever beat up my sister again, I'll kill you. Yep. So he knows that he can set Sonny up by beating her. She's going to call Sonny, and then when Sonny's on his way to go help her out, he gets gunned down at the toll booth. So in retaliation, in the first film, Michael has him killed. They're driving away. He's getting strangled. Yeah, well, he's getting strangled. As he's kicking out the windshield. And then Connie comes in a fury later and says, you had my husband killed. You had my husband killed. She leaves. Diane Keaton Kay comes in and says, is it true? Yeah. Did you kill him? And he's like, all right, this one time you can ask me. This one time you can ask me. And he says, I'll tell you the truth. He says, no, I didn't kill her. And so she's like, okay, she's so happy. She's overjoyed. So she leaves the room, and then the associates all come in, and the guy slowly closes the door, and you see he is the man in power now. He is the Godfather now. He's the guy. He's the guy. And that's how the movie ends. It's a powerful ending because, first of all, he lies straight up to his wife. So, that's something he's going to get used to, right? Mm-hmm. He's going to get used to deceit. He's going to get used to lying to even those people that are closest to him. And then I just love the fact that she's happy. She is outside of his circle, basically, once she's out of the room. You see that shot in the door. You see her I forget what she's doing. She's writing something down or fetching something. And you see he's framed in the doorway, and you see the guys come in. They're all gonna come talk to him, shake his hand, whatever. And the one guy just closes the door, and she realizes she's alone. Basically, she's married to this guy, she's alone. And of course, that carries over into part 2. She begins to really despise him so much that she has an abortion. Yep. An attempt is made on their life. First of all, he has to kind of go away once again. Yep. Go back to. And who betrayed him? Who gave away his location?
I knew it was you, and it breaks Fredo. My heart.
Yeah, breaks my heart. You broke my heart, Fredo. But no, I mean, this second movie, again, just almost as good as the first, in my opinion. Slightly less. I do feel like it goes on. Yeah,
I was going to say that
goes on.
Both movies, I don't think they need to be 3 hours.
I think Godfather is fine. Yeah. I think Godfather 2 might suffer a little bit from excess, but that's just me. But no, I like them. The Robert De Niro stuff, again, I feel like it's kind of put in there as a parallel to what happens to Michael in the first film, because you have a guy who, in the first film, Michael is deliberately kind of being pushed out of the family business. We don't want him in it. We don't want him to be successful. And in the second film, Vito is just an immigrant. He's just looking for a life in America. He kind of gets pulled into things by Clemenza, by the Bruno Kirby character. Hey, this guy's got a rug, whatever. Like, but in fact, they're stealing it.
You gotta help me pick it up.
Yeah, first it's like, oh, it's like a gift, but no, it's like he's stealing. But he doesn't really have any objections, Well,
because he watches the guy's guns. He's like, hey, you speak Italian?
Right.
He's like,
right. Well, because he's no stranger to violence because of what happened. His father and his brother were both murdered by this gangster guy.
Do you think Clemenza knew that, or was it just like kismet that they got?
No, I don't think Clemenza knew that. I think Clemenza was just like, here's another Italian guy that lives in my building or whatever. Hey, hide these guns. Right, yeah. Or you're from the old country like me or whatever. But it's, Vito is no stranger to violence. He's never been violent himself. In fact, as we mentioned, he's described as like a dim-witted kind of mute young boy early on, and he doesn't really, he's just kind of like blank stare. But because he has seen violence in his life, and the gangster, I forget the guy's name, Don Cacciatore or something.
He was like the Black Hand, right? Is what they called him?
No, I'm talking about the guy back in Corleone.
Yeah, he was Don something.
He says, we got to kill this kid because when he grows up to be a man, he's gonna seek vengeance.
And I like how that comes full circle.
When he grows up to become a man, but Robert De Niro's character Vito goes to America first just to kind of have a life for his wife, his child. Even it sounds like a great family man, because they go see the one guy's girlfriend in the play, and he's like, "Isn't my girlfriend beautiful?" And he's like, "For me, it's just my wife and my child. That's all I care about. That's all I care about." But then eventually he gets sucked into, because as you said, you've got the guy that's kind of terrorizing the neighborhood. Is it the Black Hand? I can't even remember what it's.
Yeah, I think his name's the Black Hand, the guy with the white hat and the white suit and stuff.
But that guy is kind of taking a piece of everything and threatening people and whatever.
Even the Italians,
and Vito just sees something wrong with that, because that's how the guy was back in Corleone, where he comes from, but back in Sicily. So he decides to do something about it.
And I like how much he tells his friends, like, you pay me the money, I'm going to make sure he's okay with this less amount. They're like, no, that's not what he wanted. He's like, I'm going to make sure he's okay. Like, that's a little bit of the bravado that I like it. You know?
Like that? Yeah.
And I like how he's just like, and all of a sudden the guy opens the door and he's just standing with a gun towel wrapped around the gun and shoots him, and then like how he disposes of it, drops it in each of the
dismantles
chimneys.
It, drops it in all in little down the little chimney chutes and whatnot. Yeah.
I just find it more interesting than what we got with the machinations and trying to build things in Cuba and stuff, because I guess like it's more of an origin story for Vito, and this one's more of like a thriller, like who's trying to get Michael, who kind of who put the hit on him, who's betrayed him, and all that kind of stuff. And so I found that not as interesting as I found Vito's stuff.
Yeah, so in the first film, Michael is kind of meek and more mild-mannered, not part of the family. He murders Captain McCluskey and Saluzzo in the restaurant. Now he's in... Well, first of all, he stands guard with Enzo the baker outside the hospital. They pretend like they have guns to protect his father from gangsters. But then, he ends up committing 2 murders, has to hide out in Sicily, sees violence over there. His wife, Apollonia, gets blown up, comes back... Marlon Brando's character dies, Vito dies, he becomes the man in power, and right at the tail end of part 1, you have all those guys getting murdered. Yeah. In kind of brutality, Barzini and all these guys.
He kills like all the other like leads of the family, like 5 or 6 people.
Yeah, but in this film you get this continuation, and I feel like in this film, you see his story continue, and you see just how ruthless this guy can be. I mean, in the first film, he kills family in that he kills his own brother-in-law, right? He has his own brother-in-law killed, Connie's husband. In this film, he kills friggin' Frito, his own brother, or has him killed. He doesn't kill him personally, but he orders it.
After Frito betrayed him.
And so I feel like Michael is much more ruthless, perhaps, than Vito ever was. Right? I mean, you don't know that for sure. But all you see of Vito in the first film, Marlon Brando, he's just given the order. Yeah, Tom, you take care of this, and you do this or whatever. You don't see him commit any actual, murders at all. He's just an old guy with grandchildren, and his sons and his daughter getting married. And in the second film, in the first film, you see Michael actually commit murder. The second film, you see a young Vito commit murder. But I feel like Michael is much more ruthless and mean than Vito is in part 2, and that contrasts with part 3. In part 3, he's older and he's become much more soft. Right?
He's become more like his father.
He's become more like Vito, exactly. And then that's why I think the third one kind of ties everything up. It's not as good as the other 2, but you're right. I mean, I think he becomes more like Vito in the third film. He wants to get out. He doesn't want any. Even when a hit is put out on them in the third film, the helicopter comes and shoots everybody up, and it's like it's Zaza, or it's maybe it's and I forget Eli Wallach's character's name. It's one of those 2, but he doesn't want them killed. Right? And he's like, I don't want any more bloodshed. We're gonna have to work this out. Yeah, he would not have done that in part 2.
Well, I think it's the killing of his brother is what kind of put him.
Because he's still haunted by it, right? Yeah, he goes a little hammy in part 3 about Frito's killing Frito.
I mean, in this movie, Frito's a liability, right? Because he's
very much so, yeah,
holding a grudge about being thrust into Vegas, even though he has kind of the Vegas life and all that kind of stuff, and seems to have a lot of fun. But it seems like he's not, he's not being like the stereotypical mobster guy. Like he has this one guy kind of pushing him around and just making the family look bad.
Yeah.
And then he basically sells out Al Pacino or gives up information that they use to try to kill him. So I can understand how Al Pacino's hands are kind of tied a little bit because he has this person that. I mean, maybe Fredo knows he messed up and maybe he won't do it again, but he's still like a liability, right? But we haven't really talked a lot about like all that, the Roth stuff and the Cuba stuff. I mean, where do you fall on all that with him trying to expand out into like Cuba's a new market and all that kind of stuff? Like, I just feel like that is the bulk of this story, and I don't think it's that interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. I mean, I feel like it gives you more kind of insight into his character and kind of the depths that he will sink to, I guess, or the the things that he will do in order. I mean, maybe it's not the most interesting stuff. It's not as interesting as all the stuff I think that goes on in part 1. But I don't mind it. But I was going to say with Fredo. Fredo
Frito.
And the other reason he's pissed is because he's older than Michael. He's the older brother.
He should have been.
He got passed over, but he's kind of a dummy. He's kind of a dimwit himself.
He's not. Yeah.
So and wants to have fun more than anything. And as it's demonstrated in part 2, he can't even control his wife, right? I mean, he gets embarrassed by her.
Yeah, I would be embarrassed if she was.
Well, I would be
saying all that
embarrassed too.
stuff.
But he's just he's not fit for it. He's not. That's why he was passed over. But yeah, he was pissed about that. He should be taking care of Michael rather than Michael taking care of him. But that's exactly what happened. And yeah, he gets pushed around by Mo Green out in Vegas.
He does.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. Yeah, and then we have the whole like him going the Supreme Court, like the, not Supreme Court, but isn't it like the
Oh yeah. So they've got like some hearings.
The congressmen are like about if he
trying to catch him.
Yeah, what do we call that? The RICO Act or whatever.
Yeah.
On him trying to say that he is the Godfather.
Right.
And all that stuff, and he brings out that guy's brother from Sicily because he can't really talk to him, I guess, and by his brother being there with Michael, it's like, okay, that means like he forgives you. He's not gonna all that kind of stuff. He wasn't trying to sell you out because there's like a whole lot of miscommunication. He thinking that Michael's out for him, but Michael's not really out for him, and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, they're basically holding Frank Pentangeli's brother hostage. They bring his brother over from Italy.
Oh, you feel like that's what that is?
Well, they bring his brother over from Italy, and he's there at the hearing to say that, like, look who's here with us. Look who we could do something to if you talk.
Interesting, because I read that as it was Pentangeli's brother. I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah. I read that as like you thought we were after you, and we're not after you. So we're bringing your brother here to show that like we're friends. Like, because otherwise, I think he would have just killed him, and like news would have got to him. Like we can get to anyone.
I mean, open to interpretation, but I think that they know that Frank Pentangeli is going to testify against them.
Yep.
They know they can't get to him because he's being guarded by Harry Dean Stanton
at the
and the other FBI at the Army base. Right, he's under. Yeah, there's no way they're not getting past the military. So they do the next best thing, or they do the only thing they can do is they bring over his brother from Italy, and they're like, we could always dispose of this guy. So he's like, oh no, I don't know nothing about.
I have a feeling you're probably right, but I read that completely different.
Probably open for interpretation. I think either way probably works.
So so like you said, a lot of people feel like this is the better of the two. Do you think do you know why people feel that way, or is that just a mystery at this point?
I think some people find it more compelling because of dealing more with Michael and also the Robert De Niro kind of storyline as well, just kind of expanding on everything in a better way than the first film. I mean, I think the first film is it's just great. It truly is. I mean, it's cliche to say, but it truly is an American masterpiece. And I think it's fascinating that Godfather Part 2 came out in 1974. Francis Ford Coppola came out with another film in 1974 called The Conversation, which ain't no slouch. I mean, that's also considered one of the best films of the 1970s. So Coppola had Bing Bang Boom, three really big success. Well, Conversation. Apocalypse Now came later in the 70s, and it was a disaster. I mean, as far as the making of it, it was a disaster if you watch the documentary Hearts of Darkness, which is about it. But it obviously is also considered very well, at least critically. I don't know how well it did commercially. So Godfather 1 was the highest grossing film of 1972. Godfather 2, I think I read, was the 7th highest grossing film of 1974. Excuse me.
Wow.
And I want to say The Conversation, considered one of the best films of the 1970s, was not a big hit when it came out. So, but Godfather 2 was a decent hit, at least in 1974, just not as big as Godfather 1. It was nominated for 11 Academy Awards. So was
like the first one.
So like the first one, except the first one ended up being nominated for 10 because they nixed the score. But this one was nominated for 11, and this time they didn't nix the score. In fact, it won for Best Original Score. Best Costume Design it was nominated for. Best Art Direction, it won for that. Best Adapted Screenplay, once again, it won for that. Best Supporting Actress was Talia Shire. She did not win. Best Supporting Actor, the first film was nominated. 3 guys were nominated for Best Supporting Actor. None of them won. This time, 3 guys were nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and that was Lee Strasberg, Michael V. Gazzo, the Frank Pentangeli character, and the third guy that was nominated, he actually won, and that was Robert De Niro.
Oh, wow.
Was nominated for Best Actor, Al Pacino, but he didn't win. Best Director, Francis Ford Coppola did win this time. He didn't win for The Godfather. That was Bob Fosse, and it won for Best Picture. So Godfather and Godfather 2 both won Best Picture.
And Godfather Part 3 was nominated for Best Picture.
Did not
which
win.
It, like Lord of the Rings, all the movies in the trilogy were nominated for Best Picture.
Yes. Yes, but this is the only series of films where a movie and one of its sequels won. Because Return of the King won Best Picture, but Lord of the Rings didn't win, Two Towers didn't win, et cetera, et cetera. But Godfather and Godfather Part 2 both won Best Picture. 96% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, 97% audience score, 2 thumbs up once again, and once again 4 stars from Leonard Maltin.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
Almost the same as the first film. Pretty much in line with it.
Yep. So in this movie, we have 2 heavy hitters, which is Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. And we wanted to know which one do we think had the more successful career? They had a
Tough question.
They both have had a long and prestigious career. I think Al Pacino's been in like 60 some odd movies, and what do we say? Robert De Niro's been in like 140 or 170?
140 some plus. At this time, at the time of filming this, 140 plus movies.
So one has been a little bit maybe more strategic in the movies they take and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But, where do you fall on who do you think has had the more successul career?
All right. So, being asked this question, I absolutely cannot immediately come out with an answer. Like, I got to think about it.
I had one that popped in my head immediately. But
really?
Interesting, yeah.
No, I did not. I lean more towards one over the other. But I am looking at Robert De Niro's filmography. You've got Al Pacino's filmography. I mean, it's easy for me to just say, oh, well, Robert De Niro, he's done more stuff. He's got more movies. But, I mean, just kind of looking through, so as we sometimes do, we look at our phones and we talk. Looking at Robert De Niro's filmography, and then I guess we can kind of go through Al Pacino's movies where he smells people.
Hey, you won an Academy Award for that one.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, Robert De Niro has a close working relationship with Martin Scorsese.
Yep.
And Martin Scorsese has got some amazing films: Taxi Driver, Mean Streets, Goodfellas, Raging Bull, New York, New York. Just kidding. New York is crap. King of Comedy is really good. And then Robert De Niro has done.
Was he in The Departed? No, that was
no. Jack Nicholson.
And then what just came out last year, the year before? The
Scorsese movie?
Yeah.
What?
Come on. It's
the last thing I can think of was Shutter Island. Or Silence.
No, okay, hold on.
He's in Casino from the 90s.
He is, but what was the Irishman? Who directed The Irishman?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I forget about that because it's a Netflix movie.
Scorsese directed The Irishman.
Yeah, and Al Pacino's in that too.
Yep.
But yeah, and then of course Robert De Niro played Al Capone in your favorite movie, The Untouchables. But Robert De Niro has done movies like Stanley and Iris. I think it was a departure for him. Movies like Bang the Drum Slowly, where he plays kind of the slow baseball player. Awakenings, where he and Robin Williams, he's the hospital patient that Robin Williams is the doctor that, forget what he gives them, but it makes them not catatonic.
Yeah.
Again, Cape Fear, that's another Scorsese movie that he did. I mean, a lot of his movies, admittedly, he's kind of and I think both of these guys are now kind of caricatures of themselves, right? I mean, I
think one more than another one.
You think Pacino more than De Niro?
Yeah, because I think I will answer the question. Okay. De Niro is probably my answer, and he's who jumped in my mind.
Yeah.
Because I think the other thing too is he pivoted, right? So he does these comedy movies where it's not about him being a character of himself and stuff. It's just because he's doing comedy stuff. Like he did Meet the Parents. He's done, the
Analyze this, Analyze that. Of course, Analyze this, Analyze that. He's more of a gangster guy.
But you know what? Yeah. But I feel like Pacino is when he was in, what movie was it? Like Jack and Jill or whatever, where he played the cappuccino guy or whatever.
Jack and Jill.
You know what I'm talking about?
The immortal classic Jack and Jill.
Where he's all cappuccino from Dunkin' Donuts or Dunkin'-chino, right? Yeah. That's him doing comedy, and it's him being a parody of himself, which I feel like Robert De Niro has not done and won't do. In my opinion.
Yeah, I guess I can get behind that a little bit. But I mean, Pacino doesn't do that in everything.
Yeah, but I feel like he got set on a trajectory with Godfather 3 and then Sin of a Woman, and he just kind of stayed there. I mean, I like some of his later stuff. We did The Insider, and we both like his thing in The Insider.
Yeah, he's great.
I thought he was good in The Devil's Advocate, although he is kind of Pacinoing it up a little bit.
Yeah.
There's some movies where he's kind of taken a smaller, a more supporting role, which I think he's good. He sprinkles his Pacino spice in it, but I feel like De Niro's led more movies and has done more in his career. So that's.
I mean, my answer is also Robert De Niro. I love things like Bang the Drum Slowly. I like Stanley and Iris. I like most of the Scorsese movies that he's done, and just a lot of the other stuff that he's done that wasn't related to Scorsese,
like Heat.
Like Heat,
Heat?
like Heat,
Yeah.
exactly. Which of course Pacino's also in.
Yeah,
but Heat is amazing. We did Heat in 2 minutes.
We did. It was very good. So that's kind of where I am. I mean, obviously, I think you've seen more of both of their filmographies than I have. So I'm probably pulling from a smaller pool of movies I've seen and stuff. But
Jackie Brown, love it. That's my favorite Tarantino film. That's got Robert De Niro. And then you've seen Ronin?
I have seen Ronin.
Yeah, I think Ronin's awesome too.
Yeah,
John Frankenheimer, I believe. Copland, even with
Fat Stallone. Didn't Stallone put on weight for that?
Yeah, he did. He plays,
Pacino's in Donnie Brasco, which a lot of I like. Yeah. I don't think it's like the end all be all. That's Mike Newell directed that one.
Yeah.
Insider, Any Given Sunday. He did Insomnia, which is Christopher Nolan's movie that he I think he directed. I don't think he wrote it. He did Simone, which I've never seen.
I've never seen that either.
The Recruit, which I remember liking, but I don't remember a whole lot about that. He was like kind of like the agency guy
I might
there.
have seen that.
He's in Geely, which
are you kidding?
I've never seen.
I don't remember that he's in that. He's done more TV stuff, I think, than well, he's in that Hunter show on Amazon recently,
which you weren't a fan of.
I couldn't make past the first or second episode.
He's in Ocean's 13. I don't remember him at all in Ocean's 13.
Yeah, I remember him in Ocean's 13.
You don't know Jack and Jill, classic.
I love it.
Phil Spector, Simone, The Humbling, Manglehorn, Danny Collins, Misconduct. Yeah.
Yeah, all this new stuff I've not seen.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Well, okay, I saw that. He's barely in that.
He's barely in it. I think he's okay. He's
he's fine in that.
A little over the top, a little silly.
Yeah.
Irishman he was great in.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't. They're both great actors. They're both better actors than I'll ever be in my life. But I do think De Niro's probably had a little bit better career.
Yeah, I mean, I would say De Niro has maybe more range.
Yeah.
Maybe that's blasphemy. I mean, some people that are really in love with Al Pacino are going to hate me for saying that, but I think De Niro maybe has a little bit more range. I know Pacino is really into Shakespeare. I don't think De Niro's ever done Shakespeare, but Pacino has definitely done.
I can't imagine.
Pacino has definitely done some Shakespeare. He's a Shakespeare guy.
Doing King Lear, whatever.
Yeah, but again, going back to a decade like the 1970s, I think they're both in just some really great stuff. Pacino, of course, I really like Serpico and stuff like that. Scarecrow with Gene Hackman that he did, The Panic in Needle Park. Author, and Justice for All. I'm naming a bunch of Al Pacino movies.
Surfico, Dog Day Afternoon.
Yeah, with John Cazale, with Fredo.
Yeah,
again.
Fredo.
And this time he doesn't have Fredo.
What was the one that you said was your favorite Pacino movie? Wasn't Dog Day Afternoon? It was Serpico. It was the other one, Carlito's Way.
Carlito's Way, yes.
Yep.
Carlito's Way, yeah.
You have to say it like that contractually.
Carlito, yeah. Well, that's what they say in the movie so much. Yeah. Carlito's Way is awesome. But yeah, I mean he's a bit over the top in that movie as well. But it's just heck of an entertaining film.
All right, is that it?
That's it.
All right, we're gonna throw it to you, the audience. Let us know which one you feel like has the better career in your opinion. These are all our opinions, so let us know. If you're watching us on YouTube, leave a comment down below. If you're listening to us, shoot us an email. RealShame@gmail.com. Shoot us other viewer questions like this that you'd like us to answer on air to that email address. Again, it's RealShame@gmail.com. We're on social media on Instagram @RealShame. Like, subscribe, share the show, do all that stuff because that really does help, and we appreciate that. And stay tuned next week as we cross some movies off of your list of shame, and we'll see. Oh no, actually, no. Next week we're doing Shark Week.
Shark Week? What?
We're gonna watch 7 shark movies. Of varying degrees of goodness, I assume.
I'm so excited about Shark Week.
Yeah, so stay tuned for that. We're gonna do like we did for Halloween, and just give you an episode every day of us reacting to random shark movies. Should be fun.
Not Jaws, because that's a good movie. We're doing some crazy ones.
Yeah, we're gonna do some crazy ones. We found some gems for you guys.
We did.
So stay tuned for that next week when we go shark diving.
Down under the water.
22 Phantoms and all that kind of stuff. And we'll see you soon, guys. Bye. Have a good one.